All right, as we have folks trickling in, we will get ourselves going. Thank you so much for joining us today. The Investor Catalyst Hub is really excited to present ARPA-H and one of their newest programs, the Index program. You could click to the next slide. The Investor Catalyst Hub. My name is Brenda Bellick O'Riordan, and I'm a proud senior program officer from the Investor Catalyst Hub based out of Cambridge, Massachusetts, a growing spoke network of different organizations, all aimed to support ARPA-H and their programs. Next slide, please. And next slide. Today, I'm really excited to introduce Dr. Ileana Hancu and her Index program. Dr. Hancu joined ARPA-H in May of 2023 from the National Cancer Institute over at NIH, where she was the program director in their image-guided interventions branch of the Center Imaging Program. Prior to joining NCI, she spent her time at GE's Research Center, with her research focusing on developing sophisticated imaging technology to help clinicians better understand and diagnose cancer. And today I'm really excited to talk in detail to her about their imaging data exchange program known as Index. So without further ado, Dr. Hancu, so glad to have you with us today.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here. Let me find my way around and share my screen. Okay, hoping you can see my screen. Can you confirm?
Yes, we can. Looks great.
Okay, so my plan is to spend no more than 30 minutes going through what we intended this program to do. And then I would like to spend the majority of the time taking questions from you. I would rather answer the questions that you have, not the questions that I think you may have. So the next 20-25 minutes or so, I'll give a high-level overview, and then I will just take your questions. So what is Index? What problem are we trying to solve? And the fundamental problem is that AI and machine learning developers lack access to large volumes of diverse, representative, and high-quality medical imaging data. And the vision is that Index will be an exchange and compute platform for medical imaging data, and it will enable streamlined connections between three classes of people. Data providers is one corner, data users, and the third category will be service providers. And I have to say that this is a follow-up to a survey that was also run by the Catalyst Investor Hub. And it is, in fact, this survey that has shaped the way this program is right now. We have learned quite a bit from this market survey. And a lot of the features that we have built into this program have come from this survey. So today, the medical imaging data is scarce, it's expensive, it's siloed, and it's not under a practical quality system. And tomorrow, after Index is being enabled, we foresee that all imaging data available for research will be affordable, it will be under a quality control system, and it will be accessible through one single portal. And all throughout this presentation, I will talk about data, but I would like to take a step back and sort of highlight what data really means. And the fact is that data improves health outcomes as long as we have high quality and diverse medical images to train these algorithms. So I'll just give a few examples. We can have improved diagnostic performance. There are already pieces of software out there that are approved by the FDA. One of them, for example, improves the area under the curve for breast cancer screening by about 12%. So this software does 12% better than the average radiologist in picking up breast cancer. The software can also improve throughput. It can reach more patients faster. So if we look between 2010 and 2020, there has been an 80% increase in the number of CT scans per 1,000 patients. However, at the same time, we only had about a 2.5% increase in the number of radiology trainees. So literally, physically speaking, the medical schools cannot keep up with the number of images that the radiology clinics put up. Half of the radiologists report burnout because they have to read more and more images. Pathology reports are already 1 to 3 days late past what the College of American Pathology recommends. And there are other aspects that are already less than ideal. Also, this software can give novel capabilities and they can advance what's possible. What if we could reduce cancer reoperation rates through automated analysis of pathology slides in the OR without a pathologist? What if we could have robots perform surgeries, increasing availability and decreasing healthcare system burden? What if we could predict the efficacy of cancer immunotherapy by simply looking at the tumor's images? So based on all of this, I would argue that AI-enabled medical devices will soon be a must-have, not a nice-to-have. But in order to have this, we need to have large volumes of diverse data for training and testing. And when I'm saying large volumes of diverse data, what do I mean? And we have spent quite a bit of time looking at what that means. So DALI model was trained with 6 billion images. Then we looked through the FDA database of how many images the developers needed in order to take a certain piece of software through the FDA. And this ranges anywhere between 50,000 for a page through about 240,000 images for a mammography tool. So realistically, what you need is tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of images, not for a proof of concept, but if you're really serious about developing a product, a few thousand images won't cut it. And these are not any kinds of images. Once you go to the FDA, these images have to have strict characteristics in terms of race, ethnicity, resolution, what kind of scanners you have acquired the data from. So it's not any kind of images, it's specific kinds of images that are representative of the population that you desire to diagnose. Now that we know what we need, the question is, what do we have? And we took a look at the free archives that exist online. So for example, we look at MIDRIC, how many mammography data sets they have. It's a fair number, it's about 100,000. But you look at pathology, it's zilch. You look at TCIA, you look at TCGA, also very, very few pathology images. Again, mammography is a little better represented, but in terms of pathology, it's almost nothing out there. Not only that we don't have images, but the images that we have are also not representative of the whole population. So if you look at the population distribution in 2022, despite the fact that Massachusetts, California, and New York make about 16% of the US population, the geographic distribution of the cohorts used for training machine learning algorithms by state, those 3 states make about 70%. So it's very, very non-homogeneous. Those states have big hospitals and big university centers. It's much easier to get your hands on data. And you may ask at this point, well, what's the problem with that? Well, there is a problem. I was sitting the other day in a talk for a software that was detecting lung nodules. And the software was developed in Texas, and it was working really, really well. And they took that software from Texas and they moved it to California. And suddenly the software that was working great in Texas wasn't working as well in California. And it turns out that there was a fungus in Texas that was creating lung nodules that were in fact benign. And once you move to California, that doesn't exist anymore. And the software was misclassifying a lot of the lung lesions. So really, in order to develop software that performs well in the entire population, you have to train the software with images that are representative of the entire population. What are the consequences of the lack of data? Again, we had fun with the FDA databases, and this is at some point last year, there are about 700 FDA-cleared AI devices. And as everybody knows, a lot of this is in radiology, about 530 of them were in radiology. But surprise, surprise, we only had 4 in pathology. And if you sit and think about it, radiology and pathology are more or less the same specialty. They're physicians who are reading images. And the reality is that there are a whole lot more free radiology images out there, so it's easier to develop software. But the fact that there are no databases with whole slide images results in the fact that there is no software out there. So it really stymies innovation. So how do we see this the index working? So our vision is that we have a user that sets out to develop a particular type of software, and you think, okay, I need 200,000 whole slide images to train a breast cancer detection algorithm. You have one single portal. And you perform this, you log into Index, you perform this search, you set out your requirements, say I want 39% Hispanic, I want 34% white, I want 15% Asian, I want my data to be downloadable. And then this portal goes out and search and comes out with, say, 42 different providers. These are the cheapest images that you can buy that will get you to the outcome that you need. It provides you the cost. At the same time, you have the option of buying images that may not be perfect. So say some of the data is not annotated. This platform would also be able to connect you to annotation services, say Dr. So-and-so, that can very easily annotate your image. You can also pay for these annotation services. So essentially you have one-stop shop for getting all your images. They will be quality controlled. And you will have all the annotations, such as you only stop once to get everything you need for algorithm development. So the Index concept is a hosting and a compute platform that connects all the existing medical imaging databases, the data users, and the service providers. So it's a platform that has three corners: the data providers, that can be hospitals, clinics, researchers, professional organizations. You have the service providers, that can be pathology or radiology groups. It can also be software developers that can develop, for example, automated labeling, as well as data users that can be researchers, pharmaceutical companies, public health stakeholders, and so on and so forth. So the index performer, what do we expect the index performer to do? And some of the tasks will be pretty boring. So you will have to develop portals for the data providers, service providers, data users, porters. You're going to have to provide data access management, payment layers. This is pretty boring. There are, however, certain parts of this platform that are really complicated. So in terms of data intake, we are asking for deduplication. So we do not want exclusivity. You cannot go to hospital and say, if you want to give data for research, you can only give it to me. And as a consequence, you will have to make sure that you do not get duplicate data. Harmonization. So right now, there is no clear solution to harmonize pathology data. We're asking the performers to solve this problem. The third thing that's really complex, we would like to enable multi-cloud federated machine learning at scale. Again, we are not inventing federated learning, but we would like to invent it at scale. So the fact is that whole slide pathology images are very, very large. The large hospitals, the likes of Mayo Clinic and MSKCC, for example, will likely never give up their images. You cannot download them, which means that you have to enable training with this data remaining on premises. So they will have tens of nodes with terabytes maybe in each of these nodes, and all of this data has to be, all this training has to be transparent to the users. So this part here is actually very complex, and it has to be solved by the index performer. So on the left-hand side is what the index performer does. In parallel, we're actually also working with the FDA. The FDA will develop regulatory science toolkits in a few categories. I will spend a little more time on that. They will do data quality checks, data diversity, data analytics, and data usage. So there will be a tight collaboration between the index performers and the FDA. FDA will develop the toolkits independently. However, the index performer will take these toolkits and they will productize them and implement them inside the platform. On top of everything, there will be an advisory board that will be recruited by the performer. And the hope is that this advisory board will be part of professional society, patient advocacy groups, and it will help with the sustainability of the blood. What data do we want? First and foremost, we want digital pathology data. It's synergistic with another one of the ARPA-H programs. The goal is that by the end of the PSI program, we will amass 500,000 whole slide pathology images in 5 categories: breast, prostate, head and neck, ovarian, and colon cancer. So they're very specific categories. We don't want whole slide pathology in general in countless categories because that won't make a difference. We want 500,000 images in 5 specific categories. We want radiology data. Again, bear in mind that one of our goals for this platform is to be self-sustainable. So you will need it. Again, it's not radiology in general, because if you have data in 5,000 categories, you'll never have enough in one category. So you're going to have to choose a widely required type of radiology data. We are suggesting breast MRI, mammography, or chest CT because there are screening programs, so it's more likely that there will be more users in these fields. However, you can suggest others with justification. And the number of images that you will have to contribute will be determined during negotiations. The third category that we're asking for are surgical videos. The plan is for this to catalyze advancements of robotic and autonomous surgical procedures. And again, we are aware that these surgical videos don't just happen to lie out there. So this will have to be acquired prospectively. We are preferring neuroendoscopic fluoroscopy and the associated CT angiograms for this part of the program. And the number of images on the platform will be significantly less because these images will be acquired prospectively. So what are the technical areas? There are 3 technical areas, and all the proposers have to answer to all 3 technical areas. Technical area 1 is the economic model. You are going to have to explain us how this platform will be sustainable once the funding is over. So we very much like, we all like free, but the reality is that free is not sustainable. So there has to be some cash flow. The hospitals will sell data, so they will make money. The users will pay for data, and you have to come up with a model through which the platform itself will derive some funding, such as it can self-sustain itself. And it's up to you which kind of model you come up with, but at the end, the cash flow has to be positive. You have to have revenue, and the platform has to live after we're done funding. Technical area 2 is the index architecture, is the meat of the platform. You're going to have to explain how you build it, including the software infrastructure, the compute environment, how you're going to index the data, as well as everything else. And technical area 3 is enrollment. We're very intent in creating a national platform. So we have very specific requirements in terms of the number of providers and the types of providers that need to be linked to the platform. Maybe it's the right time to specify that at the very beginning, we expect all the data on the platform to be de-identified. It's much easier at the beginning. We are creating sort of the highway, and we can see how later down the road it can be a health information exchange. However, at the very beginning, all the data that will make its way on the platform will be de-identified. Okay, so the performers will apply to all 3 technical areas. In parallel, FDA, we will fund FDA, the CDRH. It's not a TA. This is not a performer task. We are funding FDA in parallel. They will develop these tools to assess data quality, diversity, usage, and analytics. So a few more details about each of the technical areas. So technical area 1 is the business model and the business plan for affordability and sustainability. And at both the abstract and the proposal stage, you have to tell us how exactly you're going to make money. You can detail how you're going to do the user account pricing. Are you going to price images? Are you going to allow the hospitals to price their images? Will you have fixed prices? How are you going to price the compute? Will this be passed through? How is the service provider being priced? How is the data provider being priced? Again, we are not telling you at all how the business plan should look like. It's up to you to balance the sheet, but at the end of the day, we want a worksheet that has a positive cash flow. We will select, at the very beginning, we will select a small number of proposers for a phase 0. So you have to come in with a business plan. We will select a few proposers and we will give you 3 months for a phase 0 to refine your business plan, as well as gather evidence for viability and create a plan to subsidize the under-resourced data providers. Technical area 2, we ask you to provide a hybrid architecture. So there are 3 specific cases: downloadable data, which is a centralized architecture. Number 2 is single cloud. For example, Index operates on one platform, say Google, and all the data providers happen to be on the same platform. Number 3 is a multi-cloud architecture in which, say, Index runs on Google and the data providers may be on Amazon or Microsoft. You have to be able to support all 3. So realistically speaking, if you want to include all types of imaging facilities, you have to support all 3. So these 3 cases are not optional. Any proposer has to provide solutions supporting all 3 cases. There are 3 specific difficult technical challenges that all proposals have to address. Number 1, you have to explain how you're going to do the whole slide harmonization. As you probably know, this is not a solved problem. Depending how you stain your samples, the images can look very different. In addition, even if you have the sample stained one specific way, the different scanners have different illumination, so you may end up with different images that are colored differently. So you need to present a solution for normalizing how whole slide images look like. Number 2, you're going to have to present a solution for multi-cloud federated learning at scale, right? So federated learning exists, but a lot of the publications out there deal with simulations. If they actually do federated learning, they do it with a small number of sites. If they do it with a large number of sites, they're usually very small data sets of small size in each of the sites. So because you have to deal with very large types of data sets, we're asking performers to figure out solutions in which there are tens to hundreds of nodes, and you may have gigabytes, terabytes of data in each node. So you're going to have to figure out how to deal with the fact that sites have different connectivities, sites may come down. How do you pass weights without slowing everything down? And everything has to be transparent to the performer and to the users, and users won't log in to different platforms, to the Google and Microsoft. So everything has to run smoothly. The other thing you have to do is explain how you do the duplication. So again, we are specifically mandating that data providers will not be subject to exclusivity clauses. So the fact that hospital X wants to put data on the platform doesn't mean that the same hospital cannot sell data to somebody else. And that's a recipe for disaster without the duplication, because you may end up with the same data coming from multiple aggregators. And obviously there are people who are not always well-intentioned, so you may end up with images that are translated or rotated or stretched. And you want to make sure that data that makes its way on the platform is unique and you're not selling the same data twice. So you will have to provide solutions for all of these three problems. Enrollment, again, this is meant to be a national platform, and it's not only a national platform. So by any means, we encourage data from all over in the world, but first and foremost, you're going to have to meet this specification. So the Department of Health and Human Services divides US in 10 specific regions, and we're asking for at least 4 providers in each of the 10 HHS regions. And we have a lot of other requirements in terms of hospital systems, federally qualified health centers, data companies, and at least 15% of the data should stem from rural Americans. So all of these have to happen by the completion of the program, right? So by the end of the 3 years, the period of performance, this is what the platform should amass. What does the FDA do? Well, again, their work is mainly in 3 categories: data intake, model training, and model evaluation. Under data intake, first of all, they will QC data. And in some cases, the quality will be so bad, data will not be allowed on the platform. In some cases, quality will not be great, but we also acknowledge the real world data is not perfect. So we will allow the data on the platform. However, the data will be specifically tagged, such as when people buy data, understand that that data is not perfect. Some of the toolkits will help with study design. For example, when you go to the FDA, sometimes you buy 100,000 data sets, you train your model, you go to the FDA, and the FDA goes, well, you don't have enough people of the right ethnicity, go back and buy some more data. So the plan is, if you use these toolkits, then when you buy data, you know that you satisfy the requirements that FDA had for that specific indication. So at least if you buy the data, you know you bought the right data. They will also help with training assistance. And last but not least, some of these toolkits will help with assessing bias of the model, as well as model metrics, and so on and so forth. So again, they will develop this independently. They have their own milestones. They will pass the toolkits to the performers who will embed these toolkits in the platform. Some eligibility consideration, who can apply? Basically, anybody can apply, domestic US entities, and that includes universities, small businesses, large businesses, nonprofit organizations, essentially anybody, as well as non-US entities. However, if you are from Russia, China, etc., that is not okay. There is an additional eligibility requirement. As we had mentioned, it's very, very important that this platform remains financially sustainable. So we're asking that at least one entity of each proposer team must have the demonstrated capability and interest to run Index as a self-sustaining entity at the completion of the ARPA-H funding period. It doesn't necessarily need to be a business. You can run it as a nonprofit, but at least one part of that team has to be able to run this. And the third thing that we're asking for cost sharing. It's not required, however, it's highly encouraged, and we would like you to propose a cost sharing of at least 20%. This cost share must be quantifiable. For example, you can offer storage or compute or in-kind contribution, or you can support salaries, but it needs to be quantifiable. So what's the timeline? We are here, we're in January 2025. We had Proposers Day, and we had just changed the solution summaries due to the fires in California because it had impacted some of the proposers. So right now the solution summaries are due on January 28th. So we're receiving the summaries then. It depends a lot on how many we receive. The tentative plan is to give the answers back in a few weeks. We will give you, once you have the answers, we'll give you 5 full weeks to write the proposals. we may have to, so right now the full proposals are due on March 27th. Depending on how many proposals we receive, we may have to delay that date. There will be a pitch day. So those of you who are encouraged to submit proposals will also have to pitch. And that's an opportunity for you to clarify and give more details. And it's an opportunity for us to ask questions. As of right now, that's meant to be in person, but we can possibly work to accommodate you virtually. It's also the point to clarify that, so I'll mention this later. So after the abstract, you will receive an encourage or discourage. We are very conservative. So if we receive an abstract that it's good, we're going to say encourage. If we're going to receive an abstract that we're not sure, but it could be good, we're also going to say encourage. So when you get the, we encourage typically 3 to 10 times more abstracts than we know we can fund. So bear that in mind. If you receive a discourage, it's up to you. You can still submit a full proposal, but do understand that you are quite a bit lower in where we felt your proposal is. So if you want to spend more than a month of your time, go ahead. But I wanted you to understand what that meant. What's that phase 0? As I had mentioned before, we will select a small number of teams, probably 2 or 3, to fund for 3 months. That's a phase 0. It's intended to enable performers to conduct intensive market research, gather evidence, letters of support, letters of intent, and refine a business plan to validate the financial viability. The only type of work that can be done during that phase 0 is TA1 work. It's limited to 3 months. The cost is limited to $225K. It will be conducted by several independent teams in parallel, will be capped off by a final pitch and down selection. And I had to mention, we will also offer some support if needed to put together your business plan. What phase 0 is not, we will not, there won't be any significant contract negotiation because really we're only negotiating these 3 months. So that will be very quick. You're not guaranteed to be involved with phase 1. And that's not a plan, that's not an option to start with TA2 or TA3 development. So the only thing you will do in phase 0 is TA1 work. And that's all I have. Thank you very much. And I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you so much, Ileana. So now we'll roll right into our question and answer portion. Again, everyone, if you can, please add any of your questions into our Q&A tool. Together, we'll have Dr. Ileana Hancu with Daniel Bullock, her Chief CETA on this project, Science and Technology Advisor, answering our questions here today. So to kick us off, we'll start with just a question just about some of the key things in the index program, but one of the focuses is about increasing availability of representative images and growing the network of data providers. Can you share a little bit more about the opportunity and what's really ripe in this space and making this intentional development for the platform?
So say it again, Brenna. I'm sorry, I was spacing up for a second.
One of the key focus areas is increasing the number of representative images and the number of under-resourced providers. Can you share a little bit more about the opportunity in making an intentional investment in this space?
Right. So as you have seen from what we have seen in the literature, the reality is that we don't have enough data, and even the data that we have is not what we need to have, right? So we have put a lot of thought into broadening the requirements as to who needs to be connected. So, you know, this needs to be a national platform, and we are literally forcing whatever entity will be running this to make it representative, right? So we are putting requirements to make sure that all the data that will make its way on the platform will connect all kinds of entities, from small hospitals, rural hospitals, you know, hospitals in all kinds of corners of the country. Because again, as I had mentioned, if you develop software on data that's local, it will work locally. It really won't work as well on data that the software did not see. And we want to make sure that that's not going to be the case in the future.
I'd also like to add that the focus on sustainability is not limited to the platform itself, but the reason we're also expanding that concern to the less well-resourced data providers is to ensure that the data inflows themselves are sustainable. We want to make sure that when we're getting that data, that is a replicable and extensible process. And that means making sure that those entities have the appropriate resources to continue to provide data in the future. So that's why we're also focusing on those in this mission.
Thank you so much. So this is a combination of an audience question we've gotten here today, but we have 3 technical areas, as you mentioned: business model, systems architecture and design, and enrollment. And we mentioned that each performer needs to be tackling all 3. Do you anticipate teaming? And when they are teaming, is there a number of teams that anyone can join? Is there a limited number of teams?
Right. So realistically, I'm not sure there is one entity that can handle everything that we're requiring. This isn't a trivial program. So we would be surprised if we have a proposer team that only has one entity. We expect teaming. However, we have learned from past programs, and we have combinatorics in which we have the same streams that rotate. So we get 3 abstracts from 3 streams in which one becomes prime and the others become sub. And that's really not an effective way of our time in reviewing them. And that's why we had limited the number of total submissions to 3, right? So you can be prime on one single proposal and you can be sub on 2 others, or you can be sub on a total of 3. We had made some exceptions. So for example, in a university, if there are groups that are totally orthogonal with each other, then that is not considered an overlap. So they can, multiple groups from the same university can participate in more than 3 as long as there is no overlap.
Absolutely. And so this is an audience question we had. Index will hold an expansive amount of imaging, surgical videos, and other data. How are you asking performers to think about patient consent and for sharing and handling this data?
Yeah, that's not a trivial question at all. And honestly, that's why this program is out probably 3 months later than it should have been. And we thought about it long and hard. If we required patient consent, so it's sort of it's a hard balance, right? In order for the platform to be sustainable, you need a critical mass that you can sell. Otherwise, it's not sustainable, right? So you really need to have enough data up front in order to have something to sell, to make money, to make it sustainable, right? So if we required patient consent up front, we likely cannot amass enough data fast enough to make the platform sustainable. So the fact is that because we require de-identified data, it doesn't do any harm to anybody. And there are already plenty of companies right now that already sell imaging, de-identified imaging data. It doesn't harm anybody. And all of our data are being sold right now any day, like our credit card transactions are being sold any day. I'm not consenting. However, the fact that, 2 wrongs don't make a right. And the fact that it's done right now doesn't mean that we should necessarily continue doing it, right? So we will start by saying data is de-identified and we don't necessarily require patient consent to start with. However, we have put an advisory board, and that's one of the main roles of this advisory board. So this advisory board, you will recruit, it will have up to 10 people. We would expect this advisory board will have representatives from the College of American Pathology, from RSNA, from ACR, from patient advocacy groups, yada, 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 right? So you or Dan or anybody else, we really don't have the answer to this question, but we foresee that this advisory board that will stay with Index for the duration of the ARPA-H project will come up with the right solution. So we foresee that they will come up with a data user agreement. So as the platform gets up and running, there will likely be one data use agreement. And at some point, data being acquired proactively into this database and starting trickling in as time goes on, will actually have consent. So that's we consider, the hospital sell data. We wanted to give data back to the patients, but how do you even do that? They don't have an account. How do I pay people, right? So we scratched our head for quite a while trying to make this right.
I'd also like to add a few other comments here. So one thing to note that's important here is that the FDA does not require the tracking of consent for regulatory and approval processes. So insofar as this platform is meant to satisfy FDA requirements, that's sort of not a feature of their requirement specification. More broadly, we should note that it is certainly a permissible feature of data records to include some indicator of consenting that could, for example, just be a binary field indicating that patient data was consented or not, or it could be a categorical field if there's various limited number of ways consenting could be done. And that could be considered sort of like a value add feature of the data, such that if individuals were seeking consented data, they could find that and maybe they get charged a premium because they are obtaining consented data. One reason we are wary of tracking, and Ileana mentioned this, consent sort of at the individual level and sort of mapping it to particular individuals is because that incurs or presents a privacy risk in and of itself. And if we can already minimize privacy risk, then there's no reason to go and introduce methods that would potentially cause issues. And yes, more broadly, we are also seeking to ensure that all relevant policies regarding security and privacy are being maintained and adhered to by the platform.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Switching gears a little bit, as you mentioned throughout the presentations, the FDA will be partnering with the Index performers on this program on their regulatory science toolkits. What will the partner or the performer's role be in? Do they have to seek this out? How will it work when they work with the FDA?
So please don't contact them. You are not supposed to bother them for now. So we had established a partnership. In fact, we had worked with them for the past year to set this up together. So they have a separate bucket of money. They have their own team already set up. And in fact, they probably will start working on it way, way before the performer will. The fact is that because data needs to be QC'd before making its way on the platform, the QC tools have to be ready much faster than anything else, right? So they are starting to work on it probably in a month. You will get a preliminary version of it as soon as you're under contract, meaning at the start of phase 1. So there is absolutely nothing you need to know. You have sort of the collaboration with FDA is implicit. And what you will get from them is sort of development software that you will have to productize. They have committed to supporting this software during the period of performance as well as after.
Wonderful. All right, so this is an audience question we have here, and I believe focused on the phase 0 3-month period of looking at the business model. Do the performers need to list the 20 data providers and the 20 data users as part of their solution summary, or are examples enough? A little bit more about how they'll start to do that initial market access work.
So again, look at what we're specifically requiring in the abstract, right? This isn't a specific requirement. The reality is that everybody has 4 pages, and 4 pages is not a lot. And there are specific things that we are requiring, right? So we're requiring your business model to be there, right? We're asking you to address those specific 3 technical questions. Add as many tables as you can because it presents data in a more concise form. It's also easier for us to review. So if you have space to put it in, great. If you don't, I don't think it's as important at the abstract stage, right? So maybe, that will not make it or break it at the abstract stage. If you have room to put it in, great, but I think it's more important to make sure you explain how you address the technical challenges than to, fill half a page with 20 potential data users.
Insofar as the month 3, phase 0 milestone itself is concerned, what we're looking for there is not sort of legally binding agreements or things that have been negotiated extensively, just as a matter of sort of lowering the logistics associated with obtaining these letters of intent and or letters of good faith. Again, those specifications of what we're looking for at the completion of the phase 0, sort of month 3 milestone is available on page 28 of the ISO document. And there we're just looking for appropriate documentation and indication that a landscape survey has been performed and that there is good reason to believe that there will be appropriate uptake of the platform once it's in place. That's what we're trying to ensure with that milestone requirement.
And piggybacking on that one of the questions we've gotten from the audience is just about commercialization support during that window. Will there be anything going on in those first few months to really help them reach those milestones?
Yes, so the plan is, again, it depends. The plan is for us to select probably 2 to 3 performers that for phase 0. And the plan is to narrow this down to 1 because realistically, if we select more than 1, we're just creating competition. So there, you only need 1 national platform. So for those 2 or 3 performers, we're not mandating anything, and it also depends who the performers are. If one of the performers is Google, I'm not worried about them knowing what the business plan is. They likely will not need and will not want any kind of support. But if one of the performers is maybe a small business that has never dabbled to something to that extent, the plan is to provide support through a customized program of the I-Corps type. So we're not going to put you through a lecture. So the support that we will give you will be tailored for this specific purpose. So it may be 1 or 2 or 3 performers, but it will be very, very specific. So it will be experts who have done something like this for a living that will coach you on the type of data and information you will need to provide and how to provide it in order to make a convincing case that your business plan is solid. And truthfully, none of us is an expert in that. So when time comes to evaluate it, it will not be me or Dan. Like, we're not economists, but you will have experts who will evaluate that part of your proposal, right? So that will be sort of one-on-one coaching that's geared and tailored to this specific project, not a general, let me put you through some class.
Thank you so
And
much.
that will be run through the Investor Catalyst Hub as well. So I'm giving it back to Brennan.
I'm happy to be here, happy to be involved. So switching gears a little bit, I'm going to expand this question that we have here. This question specifically is talking about services that might come with a platform. So this talks about prostate cancer annotated with different Gleason scores. So that's a very specific example, but when you're thinking about the services that might be part of this platform, are there any requirements that performers have to hit for those services?
So Dan, I'll toss this back to you. I'm just going to say a few words. So it's interesting, when we put out the survey, that wasn't very high on our list. So we thought, well, data providers, data users, that's what we thought we needed. And we heard it loud and clear that very often data is not annotated. And in the end, you buy the data, and then even inside big pharma companies who have all the resources in the world, pathologists are the most prized resources, and investigators are fighting over with each other over putting their hands on pathologists. So it is that survey that brought it to our attention that annotation services are really, really important, because the data that you buy will not usually have what you need. So what we foresee is implementing the platform in such a way that, for example, so data has to have metadata associated with it. So yeah, you're going to have the pathology reports, but in many cases you will need ROI level, pixel level annotation, and that may not be there. So what we foresee is that we will have humans, pathology services that you can select, and Dr. So-and-so will be able to log in and do a pixel level annotation of that particular slide that you purchase. And suddenly that annotation becomes yours. We are putting also a requirement for that annotation to be associated with its parent image. And you, as the person who have purchased the annotation, have the option of putting that annotation back on the platform for sale, such as A, you recuperate some of your investment into the annotation, and B, the next person who wants to buy the image actually can get his or her hands on the annotation faster, right? So that applies to human pathologists who annotate. It applies to radiologists who annotate. And we ask the platform developers to have a workflow for making sure that the radiologists and pathologists have credentials or characteristics that you make sure that it's the right people. We also see this as sort of an growing app-like platform in which developers develop tools that can do these annotations in an automated and semi-annotated fashion as well. And they sell their apps. And maybe I'll toss it back to you, Dan, and you can comment on that a little more.
Right. And so one key sort of meta observation or point here is that it's not the platform itself that is providing these services, but rather they are providing an interface and or a hookup that would allow various persons who want to perform these services or implement these apps to become a part of this ecosystem. Now, the reason that's going to take some effort is because, in order to make it a streamlined part of a workflow or something like that, it's got to be very well documented and incorporated into the index ecosystem. And also, we want to make sure that all security protocols and standards are being adhered to. And sort of getting back to the original question here, yeah, there are a number of things that will be required of these apps and the index performer insofar as they are sort of overseeing the incorporation of the apps. For example, they need to make sure that data is not exfiltrated during the running of these apps, because in many cases, when we're taking data from a remote location, one of the reasons it's in the remote location is to ensure that it is secured and adhering to the access protocols imposed by the data provider. Getting back to the point of the rich and growing ecosystem that we're hoping to create here with these apps, we're envisioning that the performer will provide sort of a method for third parties to come in and say, hey, I've got this containerized software. It takes this as an input. It puts out this. And in doing that, it modifies the data, creates a data derivative or something like that, and thereby provides a useful service to the individual, and increases the value of the original data insofar it was used for that purpose. The annotation services kind of constitute a very specific use case of this app and or service interface, because it's going to be interactive. You have specific persons who need to have their credentials assessed, and likely there will be sort of like GUI or something like that that'll have to come with that. But it'll be, again, part of a broader ecosystem of apps that we're hoping to see flourish and thereby increase the value and secondary product market.
Fabulous. So just recognizing we're getting close to time here. I have one more question, but before we wrap up our questions, I would like to just reiterate, we had a few of our audience questions answered live throughout Ilana's presentation. Notably, if I am an international performer, can I still submit a solution summary? The answer is yes, but please do take a look at the countries that the government is able to partner with. If I submitted a solution summary and I was discouraged, can I still submit a full proposal? The answer is yes, but please take that very seriously. It's no shortage of work, and the team is going to do an incredible amount of work when they are reviewing those and giving out the encourage and discourage. So please note that if you are discouraged, you can move forward, but that is at your own risk. And then last but not least, before we wrap up, Ilana, you are prolifically published over the length of your career. Doing a little stalking, it was not hard to find you out there. How do you imagine if you had access to an index, some of your research could have changed in the past?
Yeah, probably it would have saved me, months of my life. I remember, I'm not going to give names now, but I bickered with the lawyers of one particular institution for one whole year for 20 data sets. So that was not fun. Anyway, so there is one more question that I want to answer because I think it's important. So there a question from Bruce. What does free mean in the context of slide 4? So I looked at slide 4. Does this include commercial use? I searched for the word free. I don't know where you got it from because there's no free on my slide 4. But what I found in terms of free, so there are a few aspects related to free. So we want this to be a free market, right? So you can develop your economic model the way you want it. So you can have hospitals set up their price. And that, this way, there is an incentive for everybody to participate, right? So the hospitals will want to be part of it because they make money. And if the platform tells them you sell them for 50 cents, they may not be incentivized. But if they know they have the opportunity to decide how much data is worth, then they can set their own price. And then the market will decide how much that type of data is worth, right? So in the end, the market will balance prices. The other thing in terms of free that we had spelled out in the ISO, it was not in this presentation, was that we would very much like the free databases to be pulled in, right? So we want this platform to be a one-stop shop, meaning if I need 100,000 images, I really want you to index, to pull in to the best of your possibility. If there are mammograms in TCIA or TCGA or MIDRIG, if I want to get mammograms, I would like to have access to those as well, right? And I would like those to remain free. Now, if you need to do some normalization, then I can see how that would incur a certain cost because standardizing, normalizing the images using resources from index, it's fair to incur a small cost, right? But the intent of the platform is to be a one-stop shop, and all the images that exist out there in various databases, we would like them to be indexed in this centralized manner. So I don't know if I answered this question. I don't know what that free referred to, but that's the two instances of the word free that I found that I wanted to clarify.
Thank you so much. I think you nailed it. So without further ado, I know we're wrapping up here. I just want to say, Ilana and Daniel, thank you so much for joining us today. We're really excited about the launch of Index. I will reiterate, the solution summaries are now due on January 28th, not the 23rd, by 5 p.m. on East Coast hours. As a reminder, you must submit a solution summary to submit a full proposal. So that again is January 28th now. Thank you all so much for joining us today and look forward to reading your proposals.